with the Pledge of Allegiance. I think it's the Mayor Pro Tem's turn.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I so roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler, Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
and Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
Councilmember Steckler informed me earlier that he has some personal matters to attend to tonight and cannot be here. So can we have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, before we get on with the audience communication, I'd like to propose two amendments to our agenda tonight. One would be after we do audience communication, to have the city manager give us a quick presentation on the selection of the new police chief. And then also to delete item 8A, the Park and Rec Board appointments. We're going to do that another evening. So are there any objections to those two changes? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed then with audience communication. I will start in chambers before we move online. Senator Levick, would you like to address us this evening?
Absolutely. First of all, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Just for the record, my name is John Lovick and I live at 2403 157th Place Southeast in what I consider the most beautiful and the best city in the world. So you know it's got to be Mill Creek. I just wanted to come down, Mayor, and thank the council. And I know I might be jumping the gun a little bit, pardon the pun. I just wanted to come down and thank the council and congratulate you and the city manager on the selection of Chief White as the new police chief. I've known him for quite a while, and I got to tell you something, that his infectious enthusiasm for public safety is just something that we are going to really, really appreciate in this city. So I put on the suit tonight and came down to congratulate you, to congratulate him and to congratulate you. And thank you for this wonderful decision. I could not have been more pleased when I saw it somewhere on some site. And I think we're going to be very, very pleased. I always tell people that in a community, you not only want to be safe, you need to feel safe. And I think with him at the helm and the great men and women in the profession, we're going to continue that really, really, really great work that we do in being safe and feeling safe in our community. Thank you very, very much for letting me say a few words. I'd like to stick around a little bit. And I also want to add that really look forward to working with all of you during the 2023 legislative session. I was a representative, I think, the last time I talked with you, and now I'm a state senator, and I look forward to really sitting down and having a broad conversation. So thank you very, very much, and have a good evening. Thank you all for the great work that all of you do.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else in chambers like to address the council this evening? I've seen head nods. Anyone online? Mr. Nelson does not have his camera on, so I will take that as a no. Okay, we have another opportunity at the end of the meeting. So now we will go to the city manager presentation regarding the police chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Senator Levick, for your comments. I want to take a few minutes to provide the council and our community with a brief overview of the recently completed police chief recruitment process that resulted in the selection of Stan White as our permanent chief of police. First, I considered the appointment. This will be an overview of kind of the process to give you an idea of kind of what we went through on a high level and then kind of what transpired throughout the process. I first considered the appointment of our new police chief to be one of the most important decisions that I will make as a city manager. As we all know, it's our largest department and arguably is the most highly visible among our communities. These days, the job of police chief is very challenging. I spent over 16 years within the Seattle Police Department, came over here with the city of Mill Creek in July 28th of 2021. So I've experienced all the things that have happened. Worked with a lot of police chiefs, so I understand kind of the challenges that occur at all levels within a policing agency. The chief must not only be able to recruit, retain officers, work on the budgeting process, work on programs that support the safety of our community, just to name a few things. But there are a lot of things that are involved with being a chief, as well as working with our leadership team. That's critical as well. Because of the importance of this position, we retain an outside consultant with the expertise of recruiting police chiefs. We work with the consultant to develop not only the recruiting materials, but also the process that was open to all of our staff and our community so that we could secure good candidates. We asked our consultant to meet with the representatives of the Police Guild, as well as others, to ask what qualities and skills that they all wanted to see in a successful candidate. We appreciate the Guild's participation in this step of the process. And I added this actually step given at the Guild's request. There were approximately about 18 applicants that started the process, narrowed down by our consultant to 5. The leadership team and myself selected the top 3, which included our current chief of police, of course. We announced the finalists, and we had the finalists meet with our members of our leadership team, composed of all the department heads. It was a panel interview. We also invited the community to meet with the candidates on October 27th. It was a community engagement event on Thursday evening. We were glad at the turnout. There were a lot of members that came out to see all the 3 candidates, and even we got some comments from our recruiter that it was a very good turnout for this type of event. We were glad that the members of the community took the time to come to meet the candidates, ask questions, and to listen to their answers. Once again, the representatives of the Guild attended the meeting and asked a number of questions. One of the requests that we had for that engagement event is to have any committee members write down written comments that were part of the actual interview process. And I used those comments and I considered those as I made my decision. The recruitment process ended on October 28th after the final interview with the final candidate, which included all the comments that came in as well. However, over the weekend, the subsequent weekend, I was informed that the Guild separately interviewed candidates and then transmitted a letter to me providing their comments about the candidates. The meetings with the Guild were not part of the established process. In light of the late receipt of the Guild's comments and my desire to be certain that all community members had the same amount of time to submit comments about the candidates, we extended the time to receive the comments to the close of business, which is 5 p.m. yesterday, October 31st. Our marketing team and communications staff did their best to get the word out. So following my review of all the comments received and my consideration of all the information that I acquired, I made my announcement of the selection of Stan White to the permanent police chief. Although the city received applications from excellent candidates, I have been especially impressed with the leadership and collaboration that our current chief of police provided the leadership team as his tenure as an acting police chief since I appointed him in December of 2021. I do recognize that the role that the police chief held, and I kind of explained already, the challenges I understand that the police chief experiences or has experienced over the past number of years given COVID. Our police chief went and had to deal with several outbreaks. We had attrition within the police department. He's filled almost every position. There's one vacancy. Despite everything that he's done, he still stepped up. Stepped to the plate and led the police department through multiple challenges that we've had over the past year. Due to his efforts, the department is nearly fully staffed with officers, and despite the very competitive market, as we know, Mill Creek's not immune to everything that's happened across not just municipalities, but across the private market as well. I continue to look forward to working with Stan to tackle the more long-term strategic initiatives for the police department in enhancing public safety in our community. I sincerely hope that the council, the community, and our members of the guild will come together and join me in congratulating Stan and committing to working with him in leading our police department and providing excellent service to not only Mill Creek, but our surrounding communities. Thank you.
Congratulations, Chief. Does this warrant a picture?
I think it does.
Should we all come down in
sure.
front? Jody, you have the camera? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jody to start us off on the next item before we come back down for more pictures. Why don't you do the presentation first, lead it into the proclamation.
Thank you, Asa. Well, this is a very exciting day on so many levels. Congratulations, Chief. We are honored to have some special guests with us tonight, which I'll get to in just a moment. Can you hear me okay? We're going to talk about our Veterans Day ceremony and parade coming up. We are getting very close to wrapping a lot of the details up, and we just wanted to make sure that you had all of the most up-to-date information so that you can participate as you are available. Okay, the Veterans Day commemorative ceremony will take place at Veterans Memorial at Library Park, 9 a.m. On November 11th. And we're going to have remarks by Chaplain Nick Lewis, Mayor Pro Tem Stephanie Vignal, Congresswoman Susan Dalbene, Senator John Lovick, and Representative April Byrd. Our Grand Marshal, retired World War II veteran Lieutenant Commander Russ Hoop of the United States Navy, will also be with us at that ceremony. And we'll have presentations, including raising of the colors by the Mill Creek Police Department officers and veterans Sean Connor, Todd Bridgman, Scott LaRose, and Bugler George Moffett. We'll have a VIP event in between the ceremony and the parade, which you should have all received invitations for. And then we will have the Veterans Day Parade beginning at 11 a.m. on Main Street in Mill Creek Town Center. Our Grand Marshal, as I mentioned, retired World War II veteran Lieutenant Commander Russ Hoop of the United States Navy, will be riding with Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers in his 98-year-old Deco 750 sidecar, making a dream come true. Which we're very excited about. And so is Executive Summers, very excited to and honored to be a part of that. So We're very excited. We'll have dignitaries at the parade. Secretary of State Steve Hobbs, Senator John Lovick will be riding in the parade in cars. Representatives April Berg and Representative Brandy Donahue and Mill Creek City Council members will also be there. If you decide that you would like to ride in a car, please let us know. We'll probably make that happen. Next thing. We have a wonderful lineup for the parade. I'm not going to read everybody on this list, but I wanted you to have the information here. And then if you want a full list with more specifics, you can go to our the website, millcreekwa.gov/Veterans Day, and you can have a full information on all the participants. And that is continually getting updated because even though the time has passed for applications to come in, we are still receiving applications. So everyone's just excited and the word is getting out there even more. So if you do have somebody that just absolutely needs to participate, please do send them our way. We're happy to work with them. We just wanted to make sure that we got everything going as much as possible quickly. The Veterans Day parade map is very similar to what you would have seen last year. We did receive the approval to put the VIP tent and stage at just outside of the location for the UW bookstore. So right in that area. So I think it's been there before, but I think it has changed spots. So that's where it'll be this year. We wanted to give a huge thanks to our Veterans Day Community Committee. We have incredibly dedicated members, one of which is here tonight, Kitty LaFazia. Kitty, please stand up. Kitty is a disabled U.S. Army Sergeant, Vietnam era veteran, and a member of the American Legion officer for Post 127. And she and all of our other amazing members on this list have made it possible for us. We often call them and just say, is this the right thing to do? We just want to make sure that we're doing everything right. So they've been wonderful. Thank you, Kitty, and your husband for being here. And then Barb Heidel, who was a late addition to our group, but my goodness, thank you. We love her. So thank you, Barb. Okay, and then finally, I wanted to thank we didn't have specific sponsors this year, but we absolutely had people that stepped up to help us out with some very specific needs, including LA Fitness and the use of their parking lot. Chris Jones from State Farm Insurance, who was our MC at our final party in the parks at the sports park. He was phenomenal, and he's doing that again, plus all of the equipment for free, which is amazing. So we're thankful for that. Panos Properties for providing the space, power, and power for our VIP tent and facilities inside the UW bookstore for our use. And Nothing But Cakes has stepped up to provide buntlets for our VIP event. Starbucks is providing coffee for all volunteers and veterans. And we also had a late entry from Town and Country Markets. They're providing flowers for our ceremony. So yeah, everybody's just been wonderful. We do live in the best community, don't we? Yeah, so we want to honor and have Mayor Holtzclaw read a proclamation for Russ. And thank you, Jim and his wife, Marilyn, for being here tonight. Jim is the director from Kosher and Mill Creek. So Mayor Holtzclaw is going to read our proclamation, and then we're going to have him come out and sign this and have you guys come up and do some photos, if that's okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay, let me begin by saying it's with my deepest regrets that I cannot be there on the 11th. I'll be in Portland undergoing surgery, so it's easier to understand me. So I apologize for being able to be there, but it is with great pleasure that I get to read the special proclamation on behalf of the City Council. Whereas the City of Mill Creek is known as a patriotic community that celebrates and honors all who serve in the United States military, and whereas tens of millions of Americans have served in the armed forces of the United States during the past century, and whereas hundreds of thousands of Americans have given their lives while serving in the armed forces during the past century, and whereas Washington State is home to more than 546,890 veterans, 62,130 active duty military, 18,000 National Guard and Reserves and their families, and whereas our veterans are brave and selfless individuals who, when called, willingly put themselves in harm's way to defend the lives and liberty of others. And whereas our veterans understand the important task before the American servicemen and women now keeping watch. And whereas all Washingtonians must strive to ensure that ours remains a land worthy of the great love our veterans have shown for it. And whereas our Veterans Day ceremony at the Veterans Monument in Library Park and our Veterans Day Parade will return along Main Street in Mill Creek Town Center on Friday, November 11th, 2022. And whereas Mill Creek resident and retired World War II Lieutenant Commander Russ Hoop of the United States Navy will be honored as Grand Marshal of the parade. Now therefore, I, Brian Holtzclaw, the mayor of the city of Mill Creek, on behalf of the city council, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2022 as Veterans Day and the return of Mill Creek's annual Veterans Day Parade. I encourage the community to join and participate in this patriotic and inspirational event to acknowledge and honor our veterans' contributions to the principles of democracy, individual freedom, and human rights.
Thank you. Just sign, well, I think you will sign that one, but this one. So we're gonna get a picture with Mayor Holtzclaw and the proclamation, and then we're gonna have all of.
Can I take one for our building too? We're gonna plaster him all over the building, so. Yes.
Very nice. Right. Yes, thank you.
Call drops. Might be controversial. Drop.
Oh, John ran off before I could note how pickleball is spread to Mazatlan.
Oh, really?
It's not. Mr. Reinhardt, we turn the floor to you for the CIP staff report regarding our.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening to talk about the capital improvements or the proposed capital improvement program draft. And I want to also thank you for hosting the public hearing this evening for the capital improvement program. So I'm going to give a brief presentation, or I'm going to try and keep it brief and whatnot, to just kind of let you know where we are at today and share a couple of the thoughts and considerations that came out of the financial revenue numbers that were presented to you last week and its implications and what we recommend to the city council to consider. Please note that no decision is being asked for you tonight. My intention is to come back in the wake of the public hearing and any final feedback items with the final draft next week as part of the budget document. Next slide, please. So just a brief summary of tonight. I am going to offer a few comments, a funding plan review, and my recommendations related to that. We'll then hand it over to the public hearing end of things, the motion to open, any public comments, either in the council chambers or online, and then the motion to close, and that'll conclude this evening's presentation. Next slide, please. Whoops. I think we need to back up one. Asa, can you back up the slide, please? Thank you. So the public hearing on the proposed, and this is for both the capital improvement plan and the transportation improvement plan, is a state statutory requirement for the adoption of both. There are different statutory requirements, but essentially the gist of it is the same, which is why I'm saving time and trouble by doing both at the same time. The public hearing does provide the public an opportunity for public comment on these proposed plans. And the public was invited to directly comment in writing as well. I have at least one comment that I need to look at and review that came in as a result of this. This draft was placed on the city website for that purpose on October 14th. Next slide, please. Oops, there we go. Staff can respond to public hearing comments in one of three ways, and these are the three ways that are basically dictated by the current schedule that we have related to the budget. Way number one is to implement a change or correction in the current proposed plan. At this point in time, with time being of the essence, minor corrections only are the only thing that we can implement for the purposes of the initial adoption of the plan, which brings me to way number two, which is to identify the change for some sort of mid-biennial capital improvement plan update to take place next year. And since there's already some thought to that effect amongst staff, and especially in relation to ARPA and other considerations, that's probably the choice that I'm going to go with if there's a significant correction that we need to make. Or the third one could be to retain the comment and its feedback for consideration in the future 2030 capital improvement plan. It should be noted that as I work to the conclusion of this capital improvement plan, I'm automatically looking to the next one at the same time because we will repeat this whole process again in 2 years. The staff, namely me, will summarize the public comments and the staff responses that we develop, and we'll provide that as a brief summary to City Council at your meeting next week. Next slide, please. So just a couple reminders, projects that are scheduled in the proposed plan for the 2023-2024 period can be funded when the City Council adopts the 23-24 biennium budget. I have reviewed those numbers with Deputy City Manager Brock, and there is sufficient funding available for the plan's 2023 and 2024 projects as currently presented in the plan. Funding projections for the next 6 years, as they were presented to City Council last week, are a little more problematic. They indicate the available capital project funding from internal city sources is insufficient for the current 25 to 28 plan. We've largely realized that that was probably going to be the case. And that was one of the reasons why we started looking at alternatives fairly early on. But the deficits right now, based on the actual numbers from year to year, range between $4 and $7 million. This is with a very, very significant caveat, and that caveat is going to be important to my comments and recommendations here in a few minutes. And that is, we do not yet see what the long-term construction cost impacts related to 2021, 2022 are going to have. It's expected in the industry that the escalation will go back to normal in due course, hopefully next year, but it is uncertain whether the jump, and the jump is anywhere from 15% to 28%, depending on who you ask. We do not know if that's going to be permanent. And so that has an implication on this as well. Next slide, please. This is an issue that's not easily solved merely by moving projects into the not program category. And the reason why it's not easily solved is the city has identified several very key strategic priorities that all are at work here. And so with this in mind, it's likely that now we need to follow up and work with city council to discuss and further elaborate upon those priorities to see if we can refine. This gets to a comment that I received from council about a month and a half ago related to prioritization and such. We did remove a few things onto the non-programmed list, but we do have a few that, at least according to the adopted priorities the city has taken, there are things that are necessary or needful. And I listed a few broad categories here, from needed necessary infrastructure improvement to strategically high priorities by the city, to federal and state regulatory requirements, which have been changing on us pretty steadily over the last couple of years. And at least in the stormwater world, we expect to change again with the issuance of the new permit in August 2024. Work does also grow substantially more expensive as you put it off longer and longer. And that tends to be a factor in this as well, especially when you start looking at pushing projects out beyond the 6-year period of the current CIP. Not enough time was available to address all of these conversation points as part of our schedule for our biennial budget. And we weighed a number of different options to come to the recommendations that I'm bringing to you to summarize this evening. Next slide, please. So we developed a few recommendations that I wanted to present for your consideration. The first one is to use this 2023-2028 capital improvement plan as guidance for follow-up during 23 and 24. As I mentioned earlier, there's a need to now have some conversation about the various city priorities that have been indicated by the public, that have been indicated by the city council. And so it's important to involve all the entities, including the public stakeholders, in those conversations. And I want to give the opportunity with the plan as essentially a transition to be able to look at those on an even footing and decide where we want to go from here. Some of that is reviewing our strategic and policy directions regarding the full range of infrastructure needs. Excuse me. I would like to be able to integrate this with the comprehensive plan update that is scheduled to start here shortly, as that will actually mutually benefit both future capital improvement planning as well as a more useful comprehensive plan for the city of Mill Creek. I also want to integrate it with the sorts of engineering studies and strategic plans and master plans that are in the plan, especially for the 23-24 period, as I expect that those plans are going to help us to better understand and inform what some of our larger projects and some of our larger initiatives might be. And really one of the projects I have in mind here, which is one of the project trees that I referred to during my last presentation, which is the DRCC project area. That master plan is starting, and so consequently, we'll have an opportunity to look at what is found during the course of the development of the master plan in terms of actual project needs. Next slide, please. A couple more I'll add. I've mentioned this before, and I want to emphasize it again tonight, is the need for us to develop a detailed and integrated external funding strategy and plan in order to support our internal funding options. There's a lot of different options out there. Some of this is going to be us taking a look at which options work the best for Mill Creek. And those options range across the board from state and federal grant options to direct appropriations. Some of these things we have done before, some of these things we have only very occasionally done before, some of these things we have never done before. And so it's worth sitting down in light of the projects that we want to do and the improvements we want to do, and also review the opportunities that we have to get assistance and support in order to do these things. And essentially ask the question, long-term, what do we need to support the growing infrastructure needs and responsibilities we have in this city? This would be the sort of integrated plan that maybe goes above and beyond some of the conversations that have occurred in relation to a lobbyist and whatnot, and more into the realm of a fully integrated plan and strategy for what sorts of grants we chase, what sorts of requirements we need to fulfill to position us. This is actually one of the reasons why I want to present the current draft 23-28 plan as is. I feel it represents priorities that we have articulated as important to the city. And so being able to adopt it and say, yes, these are important. No, we don't quite know yet how we are going to fully fund those, will help support that strategy. And then finally, it'll give us an opportunity especially next year, to see what the long-term cost escalation impact really truly is. Because that's really going to inform the conversation, both in terms of capital planning, as well as the funding conversation associated with that capital planning. Everything that I've described here, all the recommendations I've described here are appropriate under the current comprehensive plans, capital facilities element to put forward at this point in time. It just doesn't represent a completely definitive strategy, 6-year strategy at this stage of the game. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, and just to summarize, these recommendations I've just described to you are anticipated to contribute to and support favorable outcomes for several different things. We are finishing one biennial budget and already starting to look at what we need to support the next biennial budget effort, as well as the next capital improvement project effort, as well as the first capital facilities plan element associated with the new comprehensive plan that we are going to be working on. We are looking at options that work for Mill Creek to give us sustainable external funding practices that support our goals and are compatible with our organization, and ultimately looking to that overall sustainable and long-range strategic planning approach to city infrastructure needs and responsibilities. And so with that, that concludes my comments with that. And I'd like to propose pursuing the public hearing at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. As Frank said, we will be holding a public hearing on the 2023 to 2038 CIP. Is it 2038 or 2028?
Just write my script.
It says 38. I'm assuming it's, no, so on the 2023 to 2028 CIP Capital Improvement Plan and the Transportation Improvement Plan. This hearing is required by statute, and public notice of the hearing was published on October 15th and October 22nd. We've already received the staff report, so momentarily I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing on the CIP and the TIP. If there is a second and an affirmative vote, we'll proceed with the public hearing. Next, we'll hear the public's testimony on the 2023 to 2028 CIP and TIP. Please limit your testimony to 3 minutes. Once all the members of the public in person and online have had a chance to testify, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Finally, council will engage in discussion on the final draft version and provide feedback to staff on the 2023 to 2028 CIP and TIP, so that staff has final direction for finalizing both plans and preparing the ordinances for adoption. We are not being asked to adopt the 2023 to 2028 CIP and TIP plan tonight. So with that, do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, with that, we will open the public hearing. Would any member of the public, I'll start online, or I'm sorry, in person. Anyone like to address the council? Okay, moving online. Mr. Nelson, I see your hand up. Go ahead, name, address, 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good. It works tonight as opposed to last week. Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive Southeast, Mill Creek, Washington. I reviewed the plan, and what struck me as important in the plan was the total dollar amount. And a rough calculation indicates that the 40 million is equal to about 80% of the funding that has been saved by the city on what the citizens taking over the fire contract. A couple of the items in the plan kind of eluded me. I did not understand why we're concerned about intersection improvements at 132nd and 527, but so be it. I would be quite surprised if politically you can tolerate that much funding in that time frame. But what I found most interesting in thinking back is that we've had money for roads, we've had money for streets, but over the years, the council, this council, people sitting on this council and past councils have been quite liberal in rating REIT money and the general fund to purchase the DRCC properties. And I don't say that's a bad thing to the extent that it keeps it out of the hands of developers and we don't have apartments on it. But still, that's money that could be used for roads and streets. And I think a lot of the funding that your people are asking for could come from general fund and REIT money rather than a tax increase of any kind. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Nelson. Is there anyone else online that I'm not seeing that would like to testify? Okay, hearing none and giving Barb one last chance. No, okay. With no further public comment, can we have a motion to close the public testimony, please? Close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. And with that, we will open it up to council discussion. Again, we're not taking a vote tonight. We're just discussing the plans. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I just kind of wanted to take a second and address something that Will said, because it's my understanding that part of the reason why we have so many things in here isn't for raising taxes to do them. It's more in line with that we have to have them in here if we're going to get funding from state sources, federal sources, county sources, in order to help us do those things. And so if it's not in this plan, then if they're offering us grants for something and it's not in here, then we can't participate in that grant. And then we let that money slide away. So to me, we put some things in here knowing that we don't have the money to do them right now, but they're there if there does come an opportunity for funding. And that way we have it in there so that we can ask for that funding. Because we don't want to be left out in the cold, leaving money on the table if they're willing to give it. So to me, that's my understanding of why we have so many things in there. And something that I have been pushing for, because I do want to make sure that when the state comes knocking and offering money, that we're ready to take it and do something that's good for our residents here. So I just wanted to address that real quick. Thanks.
Other comments, questions? Councilmember Paddock?
Not such a profound comment or question, but would you unpack a little bit of the citywide safe routes to school study? That looked pretty interesting.
Certainly. Get down where I can actually talk in the mic here. One of the feedback items that I received from council fairly early on in our study session related to walkability and considerations of walkability within the cities. And one of the ways in which you can both identify and prioritize walkability improvements or future walkability improvements, I should say, in the city is to use a nationally recognized analysis system that's called Safe Walk Routes to Schools. And what this does is takes a look at each school, both within a city as well as within walking distance of city, because we have some schools that are just outside of city limits. And depending on the policy of the individual school district, you either pick a half mile or a mile, depending on which makes the most sense. And you look at all of the pedestrian routes within that area and you score them. You score them on the basis of safety, you score them on the basis of connectivity, and you score them on the basis of ADA and equal opportunity and equity, as it were. And you can use that to develop then follow-up projects, follow-up pedestrian improvement projects. We've got a lot of areas where we have missing sections of sidewalk. They're not big, but they are there. And so the plan that I put in place to kick off is to help us to identify those. And again, all of these plans are not meant to be just writing a report and the report goes into a file. The report that in the case of Safe School Rocks routes will generate potential additional pedestrian improvement projects for our consideration in future years.
I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that you and Director Todd and everyone else on staff put into all this information. I think you took a fresh approach that we haven't had in prior years to looking at this. And playing off of Mayor Pro Tem's comment, I mean, this plan to me, or these plans, are not as important for what is in them for 23 and 24, but the unfunded ones for 25 through 28 that we need to go and find funding sources to make those happen. Mr. Nelson is right. We don't have the money. But that's one of the things we're going to start talking with Senator Lovick and Representative Berg, hopefully in December, about how we can start finding some of those pots of gold to the extent they exist in Olympia. I'm not sure they do, but we're going to try. So I think that's why these plans are as important, as we have to have those unfunded wish list items so we can start looking for those sources of funding to bring them onto the funded portion of the next CIP and the next TIP. So appreciate all the work you guys put into this. Yeah, Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. And this is in regards to.
I know that was me. I'm still getting used. I accidentally muted him.
Did that? Oh, you can mute people? I love that.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, he's allowed to silence.
So on page 6, Silvercrest Park ongoing, it says the project is still in progress, but it's been rolled to the 23-28 Public Works Engineering Services Project Plan. Why is it? Is that it just to keep in line with the grant funding and make sure we're timing this correct? What I'm asking is the project is still going to get done this year, correct?
So the answer to your question, first of all, the reason why it was recreated in the 2023 is, in general, we tried as much as possible to clean up some of the funding organization from the past projects. So this was a reason why a lot of projects that were programmed for 21-22 that either were started, like that example, or have not been started yet, but are still on the work program for 23 and 24, were essentially closed out of the previous plan and then reopened again in the new plan to make sure. But that's the reason why, for instance, Silvercrest Park retained its old project number, because we've actually already signed agreements and we've signed grant agreements for that. So now that I'm done with this, I can turn back to my park project that I had to put on hold while I was working on this. So the anticipation is that I'm going to pick that back up again. I do not think we will be able to get it constructed by the end of this year. And so with that in mind, I already worked with Director Todd and Snohomish County to get an extension on the Snohomish County funding so that we do not have to worry about that going dry on us by the end of this year. We do still have a deadline that is an operative deadline, which is the state grant funding, which has to be spent, and it has to be spent on construction by the end of June. So I will be pushing to get that project still done during this winter if I can pull it off. But certainly I don't want to have another situation like we had with the pedestrian improvement projects, where we were working on a project right up to 2 weeks before the funding deadline.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Other comments, discussion? Councilmember Paddock.
Just one last one. Excited to see the 35th Street crosswalk accelerated into 24. So that was good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
That brings us to item 8B. No, I don't need any candy, thank you. Laurel, turn into the budget.
Okay, I'm just gonna pick this up. All right, so before we jump into the budget review and the ordinance that we're going to need for the property taxes today, I wanted to just jump into some of the numbers for the different property tax examples. I will say Councilmember Paddock asked for these numbers a bit earlier today, and I really do feel like these figures help explain what's happening. And it's not every day that a finance director gets to tell you, hey, we're cutting property taxes in half or by 40%. So this is really, it's exciting for, in comparison to usually saying, hey, we really need to increase taxes. So as you can see, I've got the levy collected with that 1% levy limit the increase limit on the left. And then the assessed value. So this is going to be that $1 billion figure so all of the city property put together, this is what that value is. So you're going to take your levy that the city needs, you're going to divide it by your assessed value, and then that's going to get you the rate the taxpayer is going to pay per thousand. So back in 2017, the typical property tax that you would have seen was $1.85 per thousand. So moving from there, we have the levy divided by your assessed value. And then we're going to take that times 1,000, and that is going to be that rate paid per thousand for your taxpayer. So here we have a house at 500,000. We're going to divide the price of the house by $1,000 to get this $500 figure. So that means if you have a $500,000 house, you're going to take that times the rate per thousand. So that's $1.85. So the typical taxpayer in 2017 that owned a $500,000 house would be paying $927.55. So this is just on the regular property tax levy. This is not EMS. And remember, we were collecting both of these because we had to provide fire service. So on top of that, $927.55, you would typically be paying another $250 toward the EMS levy. So you would be paying $1,177.55 annually for a $500,000 house. So today, if we were to have a $500,000 house, we're going to divide that by $1,000. So that's going to be that 500. And our new levy rate, the rate paid by taxpayer, sorry, I feel like that's going to confuse people. The rate paid by a taxpayer that is estimated for 2023 is going to be about 62 cents. So if you had a $500,000 house, you'd be paying $309.70. And so we don't have an EMS levy that we'll be collecting this year. We have taken out that $2.3 million, 2.6. 2.5 less the 178,000 for the fire marshal services and the firehouse. So that's where that 2.3 came from. Okay, so we're gonna be collecting $4.2 million. So you can see the difference here. So you'd be paying $309.70. So you may be saying, okay, Laurel, that's great, but a $500,000 house back in 2017, that's not what I would be paying for it in 2023. So I went ahead, so we changed the assessed value. So roughly, a house in Mill Creek would have gone up by 61.76% from 2017, if you had it in 2017 and you had it today. So adding that 61.76%, that's going to make your house worth $808,800. So with our new property tax rate, that's going to cost $500.97. So again, we're not collecting that EMS levy. So it still remains at that $500.97. So that's a decrease of 61.76% compared to 2017. So I also, if I had owned a property in Mill Creek, I would say, hey, you know, I also paid taxes last year. What is this going to feel like to me? So in 2022, the assessed value was roughly 5.1 million, and now it's moved to about 6.8. So this is that 34.56% increase in assessed value we had discussed last week. So that $500,000 house in 2022, so we're just going to say a $500,000 house in 2022. We had that regular levy rate of 1.28, almost 1.29. And then the EMS levy, so that 0.3727%. So you were paying $1.63, almost 64 cents for every $1,000. So you would have been paying $818.15 on a $500,000 house in 2022. So if we jump to 2023, your house value would have increased by that 34.56%. So that means that $500,000 house last year, or this year, sorry, getting confused, 2022 is now worth $672,800. So that's going to cost you $416.73. So that's a 49% decrease from the taxes people have been paying in 2022. All right, does anyone have any questions over that?
Just a comment, I'd encourage us to be careful with the word worth because it implies market value, and we're talking assessed valuations of what the assessor puts as the value of your house, which is not necessarily and not usually the same as its worth or a market value that you'd actually get on the market or that Zillow says you should get on the market.
Yes, and some houses will increase and others will not, or they won't increase as much.
Yeah, and the other point I want to make too is why our city portion of the taxes, and I think you're going to get to this, will be decreasing. Your taxes are going to go up, but not because of anything we did. They're going to go up because the voters approved the fire annexation. And they're going to go up because the voters approved the school district capital levy last February. So I don't want anyone to be under illusions of that your taxes are going down. The city portion is going down, but overall, I suspect that all of our property taxes will likely increase somewhat. I don't know how much, but.
Okay, so I'm going to close out of this. All right, so let's jump in here. All right, so we are going to run through revenue sources. We have looked at all of this last week. I'm going to look at a current property tax scenario just so it's fresh in our minds because we will be looking at that property tax ordinance. And then we will go through the 23-24 proposed budget. So this is the change from the preliminary budget. So this is the official proposed budget. And then we will look at the regular property tax levy approval. All right, so tonight we are going to do the presentation and discussion for the proposed budget. And then next week we'll be looking at the presentation on the final budget. So tonight will be potentially the last time we discuss any kind of changes to the budget to be adopted at the meeting next week. We will have a public hearing where I will present that final budget, and then we'll look at potentially adopting that budget. We do have up through November 30th for the property tax ordinance. So if we do want to make changes, I can go ahead and do that. I will say the ordinance form that you will see is through the state. So the state has been auditing the county, and the county comptroller has specifically slapped our hand last year and said, you guys need to stop with the way you're writing your current ordinances for the specific levy ordinance. We want everything to be very standardized because the state is requiring it. So this is why you'll see that state form, and it's not in that normal ordinance template that you see. And then we do have through December 31st for the adoption of the budget if we need extra time. All right, so just as a reminder, we have our property taxes that are estimated at 4.2. So that's really, it's just under 62 cents per thousand. So we had discussed that in the last little math challenge. The EMS levy will go away, and then we have just noting fire services go through the RFA starting January 1st, 2023. We've got the breakout for the EMS in this 2022 budget. We had 1.8 million for the EMS levy, 2.5 that was coming out of the regular levy. So that 4.3 million is the annual amount we were paying for that fire contract in 2022. Okay, so from that 4.3 million, we will continue to be paying $178,019.75 fire marshal services and the fire station. Okay, so our assessed value is currently at 5 billion in 2022. And then the levy was 6.6 million. So that was roughly $1.29. So a house at 500,000 in 2022, you would be paying $644.50. This is strictly for the regular tax levy, not both of them. So we changed, we did have construction, so we did include the increase of the new construction for our property tax levy. So we did have a 0.4% increase to our assessed value that was related to new construction. And then when the assessor looked at everyone's properties, they said, we think that house prices now reflect that properties are worth another 1.8 million. So that is where they got that 6.8 million, or I'm sorry, billion. I really need to work on that. The preliminary assessed value is 6.8 billion. So that is that almost 35% increase between construction and the reevaluation of our assessed value.
Laurel, can you go back to that slide? So just so everyone's clear, the second line at the top, that's the line that the 1% increase under state, the limitation applies to.
Yeah, so if we wanted to increase taxes, we could technically increase them by $65,000 because this number right here, this assessed or the levy, not assessed value, that was
Right. The
the
property
levy.
tax collections.
Yeah, so that is where our cap is. It does not matter where assessed value is. It's whatever we got our highest lawful levy. So we are at 6.5 million, 6.6 million. I will say we have that banked capacity of 97,000. We'll discuss that here in a minute. All right, and we did walk through quite a few of these just a second ago. So we have 6.8 billion in assessed value. At this point in time, we had dropped our regular levy to 4.2 million. So from that, the levy increase is roughly $41,779. I will say I did include construction here, so that's why that number is a little off for your 1% of that 4.2 million. You do have that 26,000 for fire in there, or I'm sorry, for construction. So
Does
that-
everyone understand what that means? So the number we were talking about a minute ago was the total tax collections in a year.
Yes.
And to arrive at that calculation, you take the assessed valuation and then you get to add the value added from new construction. So that's how that number grows every year, depending on how much construction is going on in your community.
Yes, so you have your construction that you can add each year, you can add that 1%. And then any kind of banked capacity. So that construction and that banked capacity, those are the only amounts that you can add that's going to push that amount over that 1% increase. So anytime you see an increase over 1%, likely it's related to the new construction or any kind of refund on taxes that weren't collected in the previous year. All right, so from there, we've got 62 cents for this 2023 budget. And that's roughly $644.50. And then just the property value that had increased in 2023, that 500,000 moves to 672,800 for a total of $416.73. And I don't know if we want to walk through this again. It's what we had just gone through. So you have the rate per thousand for 2022, $1.29 basically. Okay, so you've got a $500,000 house. We're going to divide that by 1,000 to get that $500 figure. So 500 times that dollar figure per thousand, so that's $1.29, $644.50. With the increase, that's going to put you at $672.80 for $672,800 house. And at the new rate per thousand, that's going to be 62 cents, which would be $416.73. Good. Okay, so of every property tax dollar, Mill Creek in 2022, 18 cents of that dollar came to Mill Creek. And so a good chunk of that went to the Everett School District and the state. And then you've got, I will note that we do have the surface water here for 3 cents. We mainly did this because you see this on your property tax bill because the county does collect this for us now. This is not technically a property tax. It's just on your property tax statement. It is a fee. Okay. So currently what we are recommending is that for a $6.8 billion assessed levy with the highest lawful levy, so we could charge $6,664,159.66. So that would be the most we could charge citizens or collect for 2023. We are recommending a 0% increase in it. We are adding new construction of $26,322.80. This will be a total dollar decrease over 2022 of $2.3 million. So we are decreasing the levy by $2.3 million. So this is a 35% decrease from the regular property tax. Not the regular property tax and EMS, because the EMS is going away. We're just talking the regular property tax. And again, we do have $97,267.82 in bank capacity if we did want to collect that on top of the 4.2 million. Does anyone have questions, comments on this piece?
That bottom line, the current bank capacity is important because that number changes significantly in the years forward.
Yes, so we will be adding that $2.3 million. So this is our highest lawful levy, but we aren't charging, or we're not collecting that much. So of that 6.6 million that we can collect, we are only collecting the 4.2. So anything that we do not collect will go into our banked levy capacity. So we'll have. So this number is going to change to that 2.3.
2.3 plus the 97, because we committed when we did the annexation, when we recommended the voters approve the annexation, our commitment was we'd reduce our levy so that it was revenue neutral to the city, not cost neutral to the taxpayer, but revenue neutral to us. So that capacity is there. It's not there for this budget, but it would be something we could consider in the future.
And really, so the banked capacity is going to be the difference between the 6.6
Right,
and the 6.2.
4.2.
4.2.
Yes, 4.2. So we will be taking, so the 6.6 does include this amount, this banked capacity. So the county gives us this figure and says, if you were to collect as much as you physically can without going to the taxpayers, you can collect $6.6 million. So we collected that $6,566,891.84. This is how much we will be collecting, finalized collecting this year. So
Yeah,
you're
and-
gonna add on construction and this banked capacity, and that will give you the highest lawful levy.
Councilmember Allison.
Okay, so I just have one question. It's kind of the last statement on there, just for clarification. That percent decrease over previous year, 2022, 35%. That includes the decrease in the fire levy, but not the EMS levy, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank
So
you.
this is just the regular property tax levy. And if you add that EMS levy, that is where you're gonna get that 49% decrease. So that is what the taxpayer will feel, is that 49%. Because the EMS levy is going away, but we will be keeping that regular levy. And that regular levy will be decreasing by 35%. So we've got two different levies happening right now.
And just to put apples to apples and oranges to oranges, that bank capacity of 97,000 would be approximately 1.5% tax increase. If I'm not advocating we do, but if we used it, that's about 1.5% tax increase.
Right.
Laurel, I think I got myself confused in the middle of all this. So what we were collecting was the 6 million plus a certain amount that was the EMS levy, and how much was that EMS levy?
1.8 million.
Okay, so and then we've dropped down to the 4.2.
Yes, so total, we were collecting that 1.8 and the 6.5.
Okay, thank you.
So that's where that 49% was coming from. So if you remember, the EMS levy is almost 35 cents. So that's in addition to the regular property tax levy. So we've got two different levies. All right. How are we feeling? Clear as mud? Move forward?
I think we're good.
Okay.
As good as we can be.
All right, so since we talked last, you had mentioned the importance of this City Hall North administrative assistant. We wanted to make sure that this position was going to be helping to bring in additional revenue, and they're going to do more than just push paper. So after the city manager and Director Todd and I had some discussions, we do feel like leaving the associate planner as an associate planner and then adding a planner and an engineer would be a better fit for the city. So the associate planner was intended to cover some of the administrative duties while also doing some more complicated tasks. It's just that the specific staff member that's filling that role is really doing well and is going, he has his I believe he has his master's. He's just gone above and beyond. And so that's where we felt like this would be a good transition into a planner, and it would save the city on costs for the comp plan. So we, not only will we get experience working through that comp plan for the staff will be more involved, we'll have less contractor costs. Overall, we felt that would be a better option, moving to just requesting a planner and an engineer and then leaving that associate planner in place. So that associate planner, instead of having that be an administrative assistant, they'll be covering more complex work. So after doing that, that does increase expenses by just under 40,000 from what we had requested previously. And I will say I did take that increase from the professional services in that community development line. And then I hit or partially from community development, I think it was about 5,000 from that one. And then the rest was from that public works professional services account line. Mainly because we did feel like those costs would go down because the contractor could be relying more on that planner position.
So I have a question. We were discussing the admin assistant before, and they would be helping answer phones and do some paperwork, do some things with the permits that would free up communications, because they wouldn't have to be scheduling everything, things like that. So how is the switching to the planner going to help that
So
aspect then?
the associate planner actually has a lot of those duties in their job description. And that is what was taking a lot of his time. And staff just feels that with a planner position, this is likely if our associate planner were to apply for this position, he would be able to fill the planner role, and then we could get someone else in that would be able to fill the role of the associate planner. They would be doing those administrative tasks, and then he could still handle any of the more complicated planning questions. So if there's anything standard, like, do I need a permit for to cut a tree down, those kinds of things, that associate planner can handle that. But once it starts getting more complicated, with code changing possibly, or code change requests, that would then move to a more advanced planner. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to Laurel's explanation. So when you're in the permit intake world, there's usually an entry level position. It's called a permit intake person. And they do more than just take in the permits. They're usually the initial kind of question answer on city code, on permit requirements, as Laurel was saying, that sort of thing. It is actually a position that a person comes into and grows into, just as our current associate planner has kind of entered in and grown into that position. And so that is one of the reasons why this was put forward as a better alternative. Is we have a planning staff that's growing. We've got an associate planner that's been here for a year and a half. He's growing into a planner. We're ready to move him into planning function, while at the same time, we still need to retain the ability to be able to provide essentially the regulatory assistance to the public related to city permitting and such.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Duque.
I just want to make sure I understand. So we have a planner and we currently have an associate planner.
We do not currently have a planner.
We do not have a planner. So we only, in that department, only have a planner.
We have an associate planner.
We only have an associate planner. There's only one person. No one recently was hired in.
We have a senior planner as well.
That's what I wanted to. So we have a senior planner and an associate planner that is currently in. What you're saying is you'd like for and I mean, that's how we can't dictate like job descriptions and things like that. But so you want to keep the senior planner, have a planner, have another planner.
We'll have
based off of this? No.
We'll have a senior planner, a new planner, and then the associate
And a new
planner that we
associate planner.
currently have And we're not asking for another one.
Correct. Yes. So thank you. So then it would be 3 people in that office. But what the original well, not original, just a week ago, it was senior planner is already there. It's a planner, right? But instead of an associate planner, you'd have an admin assistant.
Yes.
So the only change here is instead of an admin assistant, you'd want it to be an associate planner.
Correct.
Okay, that all makes sense to me. And then I understand that there's the roles and responsibilities within. I was supportive of an admin assistant because of that entry permit intake role. I think that type is what we need and not keeping too top heavy. And so that is I just want to say that's why I was okay with that one. I understand that you're looking at what works and what happens, but I'm also thinking about entry level or cost of salary of what someone who's an admin makes versus what someone that is a planner makes, or an associate planner.
Just to clarify, we were going to keep the associate. We wouldn't have a planner.
No, but
We would have the senior and then the associate.
no,
And
you're
then-
saying you're moving
Originally, that's what. it was.
yes, the original, correct. It was a senior and then you were gonna have a planner, no associate because you're bringing in,
Yeah, okay.
it says associate planner, upgrade to planner. So you're gonna have as of last week, it was a senior planner, a planner, and then an admin.
Yes.
Now you're saying senior, planner, associate. So there's no admin. And I'm just saying that I was supportive of, we were looking at, we can't do a deputy chief of staff, we can't for police, we can't another officer, there was all those positions. That's what I was supportive of. If we had to pull or figure out where it needed to go, it was an admin type position or permit intake, or support for communications. That was what I was supportive of.
So the associate planner, if we look at the job description, that is the admin role. And then they also did the permit intake. We just currently have an associate planner that has outgrown the position, which is why we were trying to adjust it. So this would still keep that entry level position and not change it.
Yes, I understand that, but I do think there's a difference in cost between an associate planner and an admin person. Like, that there is a difference in cost, and that's what I'm saying. Not necessarily roles and responsibilities. If you want to give someone who makes a lot more money some basic things, but I was saying that I was supportive of looking for more of that admin role, not
So-
necessarily planning role.
We did have potential legal issues that could come from changing to just an admin assistant.
Okay.
Councilmember Cavallari.
I think, and I'm not trying to speak for everybody, but then again, I think I am. I think our concern is last week, there was, I guess, what can only be described as kind of a hodgepodge of needs that this person would do and bounce from place to place. So I see why Councilmember Duque is questioning it, and the Mayor Pro Tem is what exactly is the need? You know what I mean? Last week it was different, and now it's planner. So I'm a little confused as well. So if we could just clarify that, I think we're supportive in nature. We just want to make sure we're plugging and playing the right personnel.
So the change here is that the associate planner is just going to be a step higher than an admin. So we were still requesting some kind of an admin, a planner, and an engineer. So now we're saying, instead of just paying for the difference between an associate planner and a planner, so we were saying, okay, we're going to create this new position. It's a planner, and we're going to absorb that associate planner. So that was only going to cost us $28,000 over what we were already paying in salary. Now we're saying that same amount is going to be hitting as a planner. So that's really not changing. The only change here is the difference from a City Hall North admin assistant title to stay at that associate planner title. But in that associate planner job description, that does cover all of the administrative needs that we were requesting. We just did not have the number of staff for that role to be fulfilled because our current employee is trying to grow and be a planner. So that's the change.
One of the key roles of creating this new level is to ensure that there's not only progression opportunity, but also this person, the planner, will be working largely on the comp plan for 2024. This would give the associate planner an opportunity to also take care of a lot of the code planning related duties as well. And largely, as Laurel mentioned, a lot of the administrative tasks that are needed across the Public Works office. And then the planner would not do many of those administrative tasks. It'd be all put on the associate.
Councilmember Allison.
Thank you, Mayor Holtzclaw. So in the job descriptions, is the admin portion of the associate planner's job role, is there like a cap, like 50% of the effort? 50% of their statement of work can be administrative in nature or something to that effect?
It just discusses the different administrative functions and supporting
Planning.
the marketing and recreation and planning and answering phone, doing those administrative assistant tasks. We just have someone that is filling the city's needs and going above and beyond what was expected in their job.
And I think we need to address the first line item. We're not proposing to remove that. The comprehensive plan funding, we're proposing, aren't we, to use the ARPA funds to pay for that, since that's really a one-time every 10-year cost. So it's, and half of that is covered by grant money. So I don't want to.
So we're taking it out of the expenses that are currently allocated in the general fund.
Right.
Because it would come out of that ARPA managerial fund.
So we're funding, in other words, these two positions going forward in the general fund budget, as opposed to funding the comprehensive plan at that level in the general fund every year. Ready for the next slide?
All right, so. to move this.
Would it help to provide council with a description of maybe the job responsibilities? So you can actually see what those are.
I think that's what I asked for last week, and I think it would have been helpful in the sense that I mean, 6 months to a year from now, we don't want to see some being asked for to fill another temp position or another admin position. So I think that's, I'm guessing that's what everybody's kind of moving toward in their questioning.
I'm thinking we could probably have Naomi work on grabbing that and bringing that before the end of the day or before the end of the meeting so that you all have that.
I'll make copies now and I'll send it to you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Duque.
And I want to clarify for the job, I feel like I understand the job description into what you're saying. For me, it's when you came to us, it was, you know, we can't do all these jobs, all these positions. These are the positions we think we can do if we remove the funding from this area. And so when I said last week, yes, because I think that type of role is needed. I'm not saying this isn't needed, but now it makes me think about, well, what this type of role, should that have been at the substation for the police? You know, is it another police support services? Now I'm thinking about all the other, the original list that had what everyone kind of wanted. Is there an opportunity to look back because it's a new planner plus an engineer, you know, already in this department, but are there other departments then, you know, who might have wanted an admin or who needed an admin? And we were figuring that funding. So that's just what I'm thinking through. And I'm sure you guys have been doing the same, but it feels to me to get this news, it's like, okay, so it's a planner, it's an engineer. And I'm also very happy with people who are working really hard and are growing. It's just, I was thinking we were finding funding for an admin position, entry level, to cover, you know, the work that needs to get executed that someone at a higher pay rate shouldn't be doing. So I understand the job, like me personally, I understand the job description, but that's what I thought we're looking for to help the various departments grow our parks and recreation, grow in terms of helping them to be able to think strategically or make those partnerships or looking for that funding. And I'll stop there.
And
I agree, sorry, Councilor. I agree. That's kind of where I thought we were going. This is what we were looking for and we were trying to figure out how to pay for a couple different positions that were very needed. And that this was a role that was gonna come in to help everyone. And then that we were gonna we did ask for a breakdown to see what that person would actually be doing so that we could decide if we thought it was a good idea or not. So provide that information regardless it is helpful, but I do agree with Councilmember Duque.
And we'll get that job description here shortly. Okay, so just jumping in, so back in 2017, you can see 2017, 20 through even 2020, we did have, in 2020, we had 3.4 FTEs in addition to what we're requesting for in 23-24. COVID was hard. We did some lean practices. We are noticing that there really is a need to continue to provide that service that our community expects, which is why we have been requesting these additional positions. All right, so for the general fund, as you can see, I've got the fund balance across the top. Perfect timing. So then I've got our revenues projected, and it is roughly about a 2% increase throughout most of the revenues as we go out for 2028. Just as a reminder, we have the EMS levy falling off, and then we'll have that decrease in 2023 for the regular levy as well. So you can see that change here from 22 to 23. And then we have the expenses that we've been looking at. And then I have overall, as far as expenses that are not related to salaries, I have overall a general 2% increase unless we know that there are specific expenses that do increase over that. So for our reserve requirement, we do require 15% of the ensuing biennium revenues. So that's going to put us at about 3.5 million for the end of 2022 is what our required fund balance needs to be, or what that reserve level needs to be at. And really up through 2026, we are able to keep that requirement. And then in 2027, you can see that the fund balance drops to 2.1 million. And this is not taking into consideration any kind of fee study that we're looking at. So we are going to be going and doing a citywide fee study to try to bring in that extra revenue, because we really, quite a few of our fees have not been increased since at least 2019, if not before that time.
What's driving the expenditure dramatic increases from 25 to 28?
Overall, it's salaries. So we have some different increase. So we have a 3.5% increase for salaries for AFSCME. And then we have some that are estimated for the guild that are larger, and then we'll have our non-reps as well. And then that just keeps compounding.
I'm just looking at 25 to 26. I mean, that's $2.6 million. That's a big jump. That's
And we can look at that here in a minute.
okay.
Okay, and so overall for sales tax, I did go ahead and budget the next 2 years for 23 and 24 under where we expected 2022 to land. I did a 2.5% decrease and then a 3.25% decrease in 2024. And then in 25, I did increase those sales tax figures again. So here in 22, you can see we were collecting at 6.5 and that drops to 4.2. And then I just did the 1% increase on the regular property tax levies. You can see the EMS levy falls off. Sales tax, you can see there's a decrease here from 22 to 23, and then again to 24. We may not hit a terrible recession. Sales tax may continue coming in great. And if that's the case, we're going to be sitting in a great spot. It's mainly, we'll go over this in the next couple slides. There is a change in the breakdown of how our revenue types are coming in. So we're not going to be as reliant on property tax. So there are some changes. We're going to be more reliant on sales tax than we used to be. So that does have an impact on the stability of those revenues. So overall, for the different revenues, I did just do a 2% increase across the board because we didn't want to get too crazy. Again, we're going to be doing a fee study. Things could change, but this is where we felt comfortable presenting for now. All right, so for expenses, you can see, I will say I need to double check this. I know we had gone through the numbers a few times, but that does look like a very large increase. So I will look at the police on the forecast. All right, so overall beyond that, we did just do a 2% overall, not including salaries. Those were adjusted based on CBA discussions. And final numbers will be figured later.
Are the 21 numbers actuals and the 22 budgeted?
21 are actuals, 22 is where we think we're going to be landing.
So it's
So
projected actuals 80% of the way through the biennium.
correct. And I will say, we have salary increases that we have retro that we'll be paying for 22. And then on top of that retro, 23 is going to have a much larger bump as well. So
That's not reflected on here.
How come the 23 and 24 numbers, the total expenditures just seem a couple million low than the preceding and following years? Oh, it's just strictly from
here,
fire?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we have a large decrease from fire here.
I'm talking about the bottom overall numbers. If you go to the bottom of the page, yeah, then you go to 23 and 24, it's 11 million and change.
Right, so we did have the fire contract coming out of there, the whole fire contract is coming out of there, so that
Oh, okay.
4.3
All right.
million that was hitting in that fire account. So while we had the revenues coming in for property taxes, we were still paying that, so that's not gonna be seen in the general fund at all. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think we need some clarification on that police line. I'm not clear why it's jumping up so much from 21 to 22 when we were understaffed by up to 8 positions for a while. And now that we got those positions filled, we're dropping.
Well, I know we had quite a bit of overtime in 22 as well, and then we are calculating retro in there. I'm gonna have to dig into that.
Okay.
'Cause I didn't make a note of it, so I don't have it off the top of
Would
my head.
anyone else like to see those explanation?
Yeah, and because, and two, I thought that my memory was that the overtime was staying flat, for a while, what we were projecting. I thought it was around 500,000, wasn't it?
That's
So,
my
so
recollection.
yeah, so I'd like to see a little digging into those numbers as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to see what's
Yes.
driving those increases too, what the assumptions are that's driving those.
Yes.
Perhaps we're paying the new chief too much money.
No, I don't think that's related to the chief. Okay. All right, I will look into these just because that does look odd and I did not catch that. So I'm pretty sure the 2022 increase is related to bump in salaries, but I will verify that. And then I do need to check on that 2026 number. All right, so.
Laurel, you may have included the consultant, Eric Shartland, in that.
I do think that that was in 2022, but I don't think it would be that large.
Okay.
Yes, so I will verify that. Okay, so overall, we went ahead and split out the different types of revenues. Again, we had the EMS levy fall off for 2 years, so that's 1.8 million each year. And then we had that 2.3 million fall off in 2023, that was 4.6 total. Sales and use tax, that will still be going up. That's mainly from the county criminal justice tax does increase, and it has been increasing. So that is the amount the county collects and then disperses on a per capita basis based on city size. So that is the only increase in sales tax that we are projecting overall. And so I've just projected these out. We did have in 1920, the interfund loan payment from the surface water did fall off under this other category. So that fell off. Yes, and so then in 1920, we had the farm development increases for the central services. So that's why this figure is so large. And then we did increase services for passports. And so that's why our passport services have increased significantly. And if you look all the way down here, we did bring additional revenue in. We did have our doors closed for part of 20 and 21. So that's why these figures are lower. Right. So this is where I went over the different changes in how our revenues are going to be coming in. So really, the two main numbers we're looking at are the blue and orange, the property tax and the sales tax. So on the left, we have 21 and 22. So property tax accounted for 55% of our revenues. So those revenues are much more stable. Even in 2008, when the housing market died, property taxes still came in solid. Like cities did not see a huge impact. And so sales tax was at 30%, and now sales tax is going to be 39% of our revenue. So that is going to be where that risk comes in. So if something does happen, if some kind of recession hits, if we have, that just makes our income more variable. It's a bit more volatile depending on what happens in the economy. And overall, everything shifts just by a percentage or two, but those are the two main pieces that we wanted to make sure we brought to your attention. All right, so moving from general fund, we're just going to touch streets. On this last one, you can kind of see this needs to come over a little bit, but we started 2028 with $15,688. And then we end with 1,521. So streets is the one that we are going to be having these transfers in from the general fund. We actually will likely be doing a $50,000 transfer that'll be needed from the general fund in 2022. And then we're just going to need to keep these transfers to cover expenses.
And I think we talked about this 3 weeks ago, the motor vehicle tax is not the motor vehicle excise tax we pay on our tabs. It's the motor vehicle fuel tax we pay at the pump.
Correct. Yes. All right, so this is going to be the fund that I will be watching fairly closely just because we are having some issues with revenues not covering expenses. So we'll be looking at what we can do to change that, or if that's just a change we're going to have to cover from the general fund going forward. Okay, and then ARPA, I just went ahead and split what's remaining in half between 23 and 24. Because this is a biennial budget, if we spend more in 23 or more in 24, it won't matter. It's mainly that that funding is available if we need it. And we do not have to spend all of it. We have, it does have to be allocated by the end of 2024, but it doesn't have to be spent until the end of 2026. And so we'll be bringing the list of different projects and requests, different funding needs here, hopefully before the end of the year. Okay, so council contingency fund, this, I've just budgeted 10,000 each year, just in case there's any kind of projects, any emergency needs the council would like to cover. I don't believe we've had much change here from last week. Municipal Arts Fund, so 1% of municipal construction projects do come into this fund. We have quite a bit more activity that is budgeted in our different construction funds, or I'm sorry, our capital funds. So that is where our increase in revenue is coming in. So you can see in 23 and 24, we are estimating 5,200-ish each year. Just as a reminder, it really depends on what projects occur in what year. This funding is not guaranteed. And the 10,000, I know we had some council members that said, you know, we get 10,000 each year. Why isn't this here? Just as a reminder, it is based on the fund balance. And so I just went ahead and projected out as far as I could. All right, so paths and trails. I don't believe this has changed at all since last week. So this is that 1/2 of 1% of the motor vehicle fuel tax comes into this fund. And so that is what the revenues are. And then we have allocated those based on guidance from MRSC. Okay, drug buy fund, this should be about the same as last week. So this is just going to be any kind of funding is collected from the result of a drug-related confiscation. So any kind of property that's sold is required to come in here as revenue. As you can see, we don't have any projected here. If we have something come in, it'll just go into that fund balance. Okay, City Hall North. So this is where our lease revenue comes into. So that's not something that flows into general fund. It's strictly for City Hall North. We have calculated where we're thinking leases are going to be falling. So those are the revenues for the most part, and then some investment interest. And then we have expenses that we've figured based on needs. I don't think so. Debt service fund, this one should also not have changed. This is just our GO bond for the surface water. Okay. Local revitalization funds, I did clean this up because I believe the spreadsheet had split that 23 budgeted figure into 23 and 24. So that does zero out in 2023. All right, so on REIT, so these have changed a bit since we last spoke. So these are all focused on the CIP that we just looked at. So REIT comes in roughly at 1.8 million to 2 million annually. So I have calculated that out. I've done the expenses based on the CIP that was presented. I will say in 2028, I did leave that reserve requirement of 10% of our REIT revenues. So that is why we don't have a zero balance in 2028. And so we're going to walk through some of the capital funds and you'll see either negative amounts or zero amounts. Just remember, we know that all of the CIP is not feasible, but I'm just projecting it so that it's tied to the CIP. All right, so this is going to be the 316 fund for capital improvements. This is going to be any kind of improvement that's not related to parks or roads. So this is going to be facility type capital projects. And we have all of those down below based on the CIP. We do have a larger amount budgeted in 2023, and all of this is based on the different projects in that CIP. So as you can see, we do end up negative in 2028. And it's just a coincidence that in 2027, we met zero. So that is one thing. So there's your first negative figure. So parks and open space, this one, we did not go negative and we did have enough to cover all of those CIPs. I'll touch base on priorities after we hit roads. All right, so road improvements, we were able to cover all of these that were projected in the CIP. It's mainly, we don't know if construction costs will change. So that could affect this, and it could affect all of the different capital funds. All right, so surface water is where we are having quite a bit of an issue. We do have 1.2 million that we will be in the hole. This is including all of our grant funding, or not grant funding, I'm sorry, our bond funding. That is where that sits to help cover some of those capital projects. But with the additional requirements, we are going to be having additional costs. All right, so the equipment replacement fund, this is just where anytime we have vehicles, different larger needs, anything over 25,000, it'll has a 5-year life or more, any kind of replacement. So the depreciation cost, that is what each department takes. They do a straight line depreciation and they just pay out annually into this fund so that they can buy a new vehicle in 5 years, 10 years, however long they think that asset will last. Okay, and then the unemployment compensation self-insurance, I have 25,000 in expenses budgeted each year. I do not believe we will need that. It is just in case. So this is to cover any unanticipated insurance deductibles for property, auto, liability, that kind of thing, and then any kind of unemployment claims. Okay, so then in summary, I really felt like it's more helpful if you can see everything in one place. So you can see where our beginning balances are, what revenues we're projecting, the expenses, and then our end balance for 2024. I believe this is the last slide. So I can take any questions or comments. And if we have capital project questions, I may have to tag Franken.
Yeah, I think it's important to clarify the chart. I think it's good to see it this way, but it creates the impression for the public that we're running a huge deficit. And we've always shown in these funds in outer years, 5, 6, 7 years out, those funds decreasing, the expenses going way up and the revenues going way down. So the general fund reserve has remained pretty constant over the last decade, $4 to $7 million, I think, in that ballpark. So I think it's important that we clarify that this is when we're rolling up all the funds into this sheet, and all those funds typically show in outer years a deficit.
And I will note that a lot of these capital projects, so for the road improvement fund, for instance, we had 7 million in here. We have 500,000 in revenues, and then we have 3.5 million in expenses. This is us catching up. So we have a lot of projects that we are playing catch up on. So it's not that we're overspending, and a lot of these already have, so we are only bringing 500,000, not even 500,000 into this road improvement fund. So we've been funneling this money in here because we said, hey, these are the projects that we are expecting to be paying. So we're going to go ahead and do these transfers. So these funds have already received these REAP funding, and now we're just using what's already in there. So that's why that revenue is so much lower than the expense. Those REAP transfers have already been made on quite a few of these different capital projects.
We can't hear Councilmember Cavalieri.
Microphone on.
Apologies. So the beginning balance for the road improvement fund is uniquely high.
Correct.
Based on pulling or holding on to some of those funds that we haven't used over the past couple of years.
Correct.
Okay. Uncharacteristically high.
Yeah, and so you can see on these REIT. So we've still got 3.7 coming in. So this is what's going to fund all of these capital projects. And you can see the revenues at 3.7 and we have absolutely no expenses coming out. So that's really unusual. It's mainly that funding is already sitting in those accounts because we thought we'd be using that money. And so as the different finance directors have circled in and out, they said, tag, you're it, make sure you do transfers on REIT because you need these capital projects. And so I know that I did quite a few transfers and I was like, are you sure we're supposed to be doing this? And he was, the last finance director was like, here's all the transfers, make sure they happen by the end of the year. And I was like, all right. So now we just have fund balances that are very large because we have not been able to keep up with those capital projects because of COVID, because of staffing issues, that kind of thing. All right.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Allison.
So I have a question back on the position description, since we've had that in front of us for a little bit. When I read through it, it looks like it's not really an entry level position, that someone has to have 4 years of experience to qualify for it. So what is the entry level position below this one that somebody would have to grow into this one?
I feel like I would need Director Todd on that, and he is at the fire budget meeting.
Okay, and the reason why I poke at that a little bit is that I hate to see a position where somebody wouldn't have any growth. And if you're going to propose, opening up that growth position, moving someone into that, then, where would this person have growth potential within the city? So, what's the one step lower? Maybe target that, bring somebody in so that they could at least have one step in front of them available.
Councilmember Duque.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, because there's, someone, there's someone, a requirement, permit technician within, 12 months. But is there that position of someone who's, working towards that or has plans to do that is in the interview process?
Okay, we will look into that. All right, so from here, we do need to at least consider potentially either approving or pushing the property tax ordinance. And Asa, can you bring up that? I'm sorry, this is on the fly. Can you bring that ordinance up that is in the agenda?
I will, just give me 1 second.
So I will say this is very different from what you are used to seeing. So on this form, the state has not set it up in a way that we can say, hey, this is going to be a negative number. So that I have received direction to put 0 and 0 on the form. And then there is a form that I certify with the county, the levy comptroller. And that will be where we have that $4.2 million and the construction cost. That will be certified and available to the public through the county. And we can put it up online as well.
Can you bring back up the slide that has the projected general fund balance?
Yes.
I'll stop share mine, but I do have it ready when you are.
Okay.
I want to just throw out a comment. I'm not going to make any motions, as I typically don't, but I would like to punt this for 1 week and have us consider a 1% increase. I'm not even sure I'm advocating for it, but here's why.
I have included a 1% increase in that $4.2 million. I'm sorry, I'm
Oh,
not sure if I made that
in the
clear.
budget?
Yes.
Oh, so we have,
So it is not that 65,000.
it's the 1% of what we'd actually collect.
Correct.
Okay, so so this 0% doesn't reflect the budget then you're presenting, because it has a,
So the trick here, or the more complicated piece of this, is that we aren't actually, so as far as the county is concerned, we're not adding a 1%. So this is all artificially, yes. So we are 2.3 million under the highest lawful levy. So unless we go above that 6.6 figure or that 6.5 that we collected last year. If we don't go above that, it's not considered a 1% increase. But artificially, I am saying I've included a 1% increase from what we collected if we took the fire contract out of our general fund revenues. So on that property tax, at 6.5, when we dropped that to 4.2, it's that 4.2 that I've got an artificial 1%, that $45,000. And that, or I don't think it's 45, I think it's 41.
Okay, I think we need to find a way to clearly articulate that because I didn't understand it because it's confusing to the public if we say we're not raising taxes when really what we're technically not raising them if we move forward with this budget. But we told the voters we'd make it cost revenue neutral to the city. We're actually making it revenue neutral less $45,000.
Correct.
So it's adopting a property tax without adopting a property tax.
Right.
Yes.
And the reason the reason why I wanted to bring that slide up was where I was struggling with is, you know, and Director Todd, I don't think is with us tonight, but you know, I think the two of us and primarily the ones that argue for consistency. I mean, because the one thing that's constant, we saw the numbers, is our costs are continually going up. And the revenues don't go up as fast, much slower, and they're much less predictable. And I've always advocated for more consistency for the taxpayers rather than yin yang. Let's do 0% for a few years, make them feel good. And then consider hitting them in 1 year with a larger increase. Because I mean, the reality is a 1% increase is $65,000 across what, 4,300 properties in the city of Mill Creek. So it's a really de minimis impact on the voters, on the taxpayers. At the same time, for my 9 years on the council, we've seen that same projection for the general fund where for 5 years it looks great. And in the latter 2 years, it drops off down to next to zero. Every year. And here we are 9 years later, and we didn't hit that bottom that 8 years ago we thought we'd hit. We're projecting it another 5 years out. I can't explain why, but that's where I struggle. Maybe it's Councilmember Bond's words that, you know, the dollars always end up coming in for one reason or another. We always budget very conservatively on the revenue side, which is prudent. And we always are pleasantly surprised, even through some of the bad times. So if my suggestion was going to be taken off the table, then if it's incorporated into the budget, but I think we need to make sure we clearly explain that to the voters of what we're doing, because it is $45,000 different than what we told them we plan to do when we encourage them to approve the annexation. Councilmember Duque.
So I came to that realization this week, you know, realizing, oh, it's in there after having some discussions. And for me, I should check. To have a discussion about this, do we need to have a motion or is it okay to just?
It depends on what you're wanting to discuss.
I just wanted to say, for me, it's difficult to, once I made that realization, because we have ARPA funding, right? So then we set a certain amount of money for our voters that we're doing, or that we said that we would do. And then even though it's decreasing for residents, it's not, and yes, they voted on it. It's not something we did. We are still, you know, representatives of them. And so I appreciated the quick comment about like seeing if we could put this for another week, because I was looking at the numbers of what is it then based off of your calculations, looking at it for the Everett School District. It's because they're at 4.08. So then for that same like number you gave us, it would be 2,745 something is like the addition that we'd pay. And I don't even have I couldn't find, and I didn't want to interrupt presentations, what number it is for fire, you know? So what is it? What is that number that residents would see?
I think the other number that would be helpful for everyone to see is, I remember we saw this slide a number of years ago. The difference between ARPA and the property tax is the ARPA is a one-time shot of adrenaline. The property tax compounds over time.
Yes.
And that number is at 1% over 5-7 years is a lot more than $65,000.
And sorry, and I mentioned ARPA just because we
No, I know.
have funds coming in.
I know.
That's all, that's what I meant, was not that it's long-term or anything, but it's hard to, I feel it's difficult for me to say, oh, we need this money, when we have this other money given to us. So that's where I am, in my space of wanting to make sure we deliver what we said we would be doing, with the acknowledgement that there is funding that we're looking at from other places. And I'll stop.
Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Holtzclaw. So you showed, I can't tell which slide number it is. It's a few down, that stack chart, up one more, right there, that breaks down the taxes and the fees. You said that some of these aren't taxes, that they're fees. Could you go into
So-
a little bit more explanation?
So the surface water fee is,
Okay,
we used to collect that ourselves. So that is, I want to say 260, don't quote me on this.
per household.
206.
Okay.
206 per household. And so right now the county collects that. It is on your property tax bill. You'll just see it.
It's
It
not
is
based
a
on your
fee.
assessed valuation.
Right, it's a set fee per property.
We were paying staff to send out billings to all the properties for the service fee and then processing the collections and the payments. And the county was willing to just add that to their tax bill and then they remitted to us. I think they might charge a small fee off the top.
They do.
But it takes us from having to have staff do it.
Okay,
And our collections have been more reliable, so more solid. They don't vary as much now since it's on your property tax statement.
It's bigger consequences if you don't pay your property tax than if you didn't pay your city surface water bill.
okay, is that the only one on this stack chart? It's a fee based like that?
For the city, yes.
Okay.
The Snohomish Conservation District is a similar fee as opposed to a tax. So there's another small slice in there.
Okay.
But that's not the city's.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. This is my 8th year on the council and I can honestly say I've never supported or jumped in on a tax increase since I've sat up here. I've always thought that we could tighten the belt. We could figure it out, especially during downtimes. And last week was the first time I think I've ever spoken up that myself and anybody sitting up here does need to be a bit more open-minded at the prospect in front of us. The city, the last couple of years during COVID has really tightened its belt. We've leaned down our staffing and to some degree, our deliveries and services have suffered a little bit and not much, but we've maintained. So, but now that we're moving back up, we're staffing back up projects that need to be done. We were informed last week that are not getting done because we don't have the available staffing. We don't have the engineers to scope and do X, Y, Z. So it's clear that the rubber's hitting the road, that we're not going to hit those benchmarks of being able to deliver the services that the citizens of Mill Creek expect. So this round, I'm, as I stated last week, more open to the idea of a 1% increase than I was any other time that I've sat up here and had this conversation, simply for that fact, the expectation of services and even given the economy and what we see now and the uncertainty. I think we've been a shining example of how to do it right all these years. And I wouldn't want to, for 1%, I wouldn't want to wipe that all away just on, to try and die on a hill. So I'm open-minded to it. I'm happy to have the discussion and I'd love to hear from everybody else. Thank you.
I will say that one of those positions will have to go away if this does not happen.
Well, I'm sorry, if what doesn't happen?
If a 1% increase, because we will have those additional costs that will not be able to be covered by staff for those professional services related to the comp plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see that compounding number, just so everyone can see what the 1% means. And if we were to do this, I think we should do it in a way where we're not building in that we're going down to zero like we told the voters we would do, and then we're going to take a vote whether or not we raise taxes. So we're as transparent as can be, but you know, part of the discussion we had a couple weeks ago with Martin and Laurel was, you know, there's a lot on that wish list, and I know we'd all wish we could fund it. That's $3 million a year, 3.3 million. So the discussion we had that they brought back to you last week while I was gone was, you know, what are the most critical needs that are going to have the biggest impact right now that we could adjust some stuff around to find the money to do that. And they've done that. I think next year in the next budget in 2 years, we're going to need to have a discussion of that bank capacity, because as Councilmember Cavalieri said, the residents still demand the services. And the reality is those services aren't free. And so I think we're going to have a discussion of what those needs are, and a discussion amongst us and with the community of, should we dip into that to get more officers or a deputy police chief or whatever the position is that staff needs. So I'd like us to noodle on this for a week and have an informed discussion next week and make a decision then. Is that kosher with everyone?
Yeah, Mayor, I have my light on.
No, you don't.
I don't. Oh, I
That's why I
didn't. I
didn't
hit the
call on you.
wrong one.
Noticed it does that. It shuts off at about 30
I'm
seconds.
hitting the
You're
wrong light.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm hitting the wrong light. I have a question. I'm listening to my colleagues here and I hear what everyone is saying, and everyone's coming from a different place. And one of the things I'm curious to know is, like Councilmember Duque said, we do have all this ARPA money. So I'd be curious what it would look like. We would not have the compounding interest, obviously, if we were to use ARPA funding instead of the increase this year. And so I feel like that money is sitting there and that maybe we should consider using it for filling in that gap in roles instead of increasing on the residents. And just kind of maybe have that discussion, since we had said that we would not increase on them this year over the fire. So I think it's something that we should at least look at and see what that would look like, as opposed to what it would look like if we did the increase. And like Mayor Holtzclaw mentioned, the compounding effect that would have. I think it would be interesting to look at the two and give us some options. Thanks.
Any other lights on?
Anybody else think they have a
Yeah.
All right, we'll get those numbers and bring them back next week.
Thank you, Laurel. Okay, the consent agenda is a doozy tonight. We have council regular meeting minutes of October 11th, 2022, and council regular meeting minutes of October 25th, 2022. Do we have a
Mayor
motion?
Holtzclaw, may I just interject? I just wanted to make sure that council is aware we had a Scrivener's error on the October 11th version. We inadvertently left off Councilmember Paddock in the roll call, but that's since been corrected in the version that's online.
That is part of the consent agenda for approval tonight. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved 6-0. Staff report, city manager. Arson, I'm not sure who starts.
We have no reports on the city side. Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Trying to think here. Only two things. Thank you to Mayor Pro Tem for covering me last week while I was drinking margaritas. Appreciate it. And then I had the pleasure of attending cutting the ribbon for a business just outside of Mill Creek, but the dog stop down on 180th. Cool place, neat new business down there by Bartels. So I took my dogs down there with me to help me cut the ribbon. It was a well-attended event. So look forward to going back there. Mayor Pro Tem, any reports?
Thank you, Mayor. I did, as I reported to all of you, go to the SCT meeting when the mayor was not here. I did bring to that body, as I had said I would, a request that they look at having a broader discussion on the consequences and effects of House Bill 1220 and how it will affect all of us. There was a very robust, interesting discussion. And quite a few members did agree with me that we need to have a broader discussion on this. It's extremely important. Mayor Gailey also ended with agreeing we need to all talk about this, but they did not give me a next step. So Mayor may need to look into that a little bit for me. But at the same time, I know that they're in the middle of staffing changes as well, because Cynthia, who used to run our meeting, has retired. And so they're in the middle of getting someone in place. So there may be some logistics there with getting someone to pull together a broader meeting, but it was definitely a very good discussion. And it sounds like quite a few people are in favor. And I did reach out to Mayor Franklin as well, and she's also in favor of a broader discussion that pulls all council members into a discussion about the effects that 1221. So just want to let everyone know that I did bring that to them, and it sounds like there's lots of interest in learning more. Thanks.
Well, it's the interest in, I mean, I talked to Director Todd before this about this, and it's the issue of coming from the Planning Advisory Committee of the Snohomish County tomorrow with non-elected planning directors that are part of that committee. They're interpreting this state law one way differently than I think the electeds do, but the way the state SCT process works, it starts with staff and then comes to the electeds. On issues like this, I think it's the type of thing that should start the other way around, but we'll try to get it sorted out. So, Councilmember Cavalieri, any report?
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to maybe give a shout out to Stan White and congratulate him publicly. It's a pretty cool prospect when you see someone come on board as an officer, much like a private in the military, and making it to general. And here he is, the top cop. So kudos to him for conducting himself in a manner befitting to be worthy of the top cop in a city like Mill Creek. I commend you, sir. I'm proud to know you all these years. I think you do a fine job, and to have you on the road, to have you in the office, and just to have you on our staff here is really a blessing. So thank you for your dedicated service, and the city is better having you in your position now. So thanks for that. And also one last shout out to staff member who knew I was running 1,000 miles an hour today, didn't have access to my laptop, and that was Asa, for getting me all the information I needed sent to my personal device, and having everything I needed up here on the dais today. So thank you for that, for being responsive and going out of your way. Thank you.
Councilmember Allison, any report?
I just wanted to say that Councilmember Paddock and Councilmember Duque and I interviewed a couple of candidates for one of the commissions, and both candidates mentioned public safety in our parks. And so I just wanted, public service announcement, call the non-emergency number, use the website, report those things that, seem out of place, make you feel uncomfortable. Somebody will follow up, it might not be immediately, but it's important that we collect that information, the things that aren't quite right. And I guess that's all I have to say on that. And congratulations, Chief White.
Chief, correct us. I mean, this issue has come up before. When in doubt, residents should, I'm always told, to call 911 and let the dispatcher sort it out how emergent it is. The citizens shouldn't be debating, well, what's the dang non-emergency number? What do I call? Am I correct?
Mayor, that is correct. And there isn't a non-emergency number. However, it's sometimes difficult to remember, and it takes time to look it up via the web. So please don't hesitate to call 911 if you do have a concern. But if you do have the time to look up the alternate number, that's beneficial as well. So either route, as long as you're making that contact, that's what we want.
Councilmember Duque, any report tonight?
Yes, happy day after Halloween. I just wanted to say it was so fun to see all the events that everyone had, and all the trick or treaters. That's how in my household we celebrate, walking in the rain. You earn that candy, no matter what. So for all of that, also just wanted to acknowledge today is the start of Dia de Muertos. So for anyone who's honoring those who have passed this year or any year, just wanted to flag that. I was going to say more, but then I'm going to cry. So I'm going to move on. Thank you.
Councilmember Paddock.
Thank you. Again, congratulations, Chief. I also had the chance, an impromptu chance to observe the K-9 team training in our neighborhood. Just happened to be walking by. I was especially impressed by the young woman who was the target of the K-9. I was kind of wondering what was going on in my neighborhood, but it was an impressive showing. And also it was a combination of the city as well as Snohomish Sheriff, and that cooperation looked really fantastic. So pass that along. As I mentioned last meeting, I attended that Economic Alliance of Snohomish County over at the Linwood Convention Center, based on the recommendation from Ritter at the Mill Creek Chamber of Commerce. The couple of folks there from that Economic Alliance, Brian Doyle and Robin Curtis, were very well versed with what Jody and Scott are doing and the work that Jeff wants to do to actually accelerate their involvement in our city. I think is just going to be a terrific, hopefully a terrific addition to being able to accelerate some economic development here. So that was a fun event as well. Not as fun as the K-9, but that was enjoyable. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to audience communication. I'll start in the chambers. Ms. Heidel, name, address, 3 minutes. We'll have just enough time for the two of you at 3 minutes each without having to extend the meeting.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. I wish to thank our city manager and his team for the thoroughness in the process of finding our new police chief. I am very happy to add my congratulations to Chief White. I know he will put all his effort in creating a great police department, making our community safe, creating a strong bridge that reaches out with the city, community, and police force. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive, Southeast Mill Creek. You know, after a while, you really get tired of the crap. These comments about government never having enough money. Government never will have enough money, ever, never. Last year, the de minimis increase in property taxes, at least in my bill, amounted to 8%. To me, that's hardly de minimis. You know, I supported that change in fire service and wrote positively about it and even voted for the damn thing, although I'm very disgusted with all these damn gritty firemen. Did you guys know that while you're discussing all of this, the Fire District 7 is bragging on their financial reports that they're going to double their cash reserves in 6 years? And I sent that to your previous city manager, but it didn't seem to have much effect with him. If you're going to do a stealth 1% increase, then I think you should tell the public. Personally, I think it's abhorrent that you're going to try that. It's not keeping the promise that you made with the people to give the money back. And I understand that government will never have enough money. Mike Todd will never have enough money. If it was up to Mike Todd, he would take every bit of the money that we saved on the fire service and he would use it for his planning department. Anyway, end of rant. But I can guarantee you, I'm never going to support one of these damn things again. And again, end of rant. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the council? Hearing none, if there's no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Cavalieri had one item for the good of the order.
Just really quick, Mayor. Just a heads up to our new police chief and city manager. I'm noticing a large amount of shopping carts that are now starting to collect on 35th, 132nd and Both Leverett Highway. So I'm hoping we can get that ordinance reviewed that I drafted with our city attorney and we can start we can start following through and cleaning that up. Thank you.
And with that, if there's no objection, we'll adjourn the meeting at 8:26 PM and reconvene a week from tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.